I'm Lisa, 32 years old. Up until a couple of months back, my days flowed in a quiet rhythm that most folks might label as ordinary from afar. I rented a cozy spot on the third level in a Portland, Oregon community, filled with sunlight and greenery lining the windowsills, plants I greet by their personal monikers. My monstera goes by Ing, and the Zamioculcas zamiifolia is Ilsa. I handle project coordination at a modest firm. I take my coffee with oat milk, and I'm utterly devoted to John, my John, who's 2 years my senior. He majored in mechanical engineering and now handles product innovation tasks that always leave me a bit fuzzy on the details. He chuckles whenever I act like I've got it all sorted. We've shared 5 years of marriage. Picturing our ceremony, the image that hits me first is his hands, reliable, unflinching ones that gripped my flowers while I teared up from the sudden downpour, even though the forecast had promised clear skies. The officiant just quipped, "Looks like rain's the plan," and we rolled with it. Joy followed. Sounds like a tired trope, but that shared warmth truly enveloped our routines. All that shifted once I picked up on the lingering flavor. It kicked off one crisp Saturday in late October when Marianne declared she'd drop by. Marianne, 2 syllables slicing like twin blades, John's mom. In my mind, I skipped the term mother-in-law entirely. It felt far too gentle for someone who arrived swathed in neutral trench coats, evoking a chill gust, her hair impeccably styled, makeup unflawed, and remarks that passed as praise but landed like veiled jabs. "Oh, Lisa, you've baked something fresh. It has an intriguing aroma." Or, "John, you seem worn out. Overdoing it at work. It's evident." She typically arrived bearing gifts: broth in a vintage glass container, a tart overloaded with spice, or homegrown remedies from her tidy yard in Gresham. All organic, she'd insist, placing a palm on my arm like I desperately needed the wisdom. That day, she carried a batch of pumpkin stew, plus a tiny container of murky green spread. "Parsley pesto, darling," she told John, a term she reserved solely for him. "Soothes the gut," she added with a chuckle, "and calms the jitters." Our kitchen felt cozy and heated. John cracked the pane open, letting vapor curl up from the vessel. While I hunted for utensils, I caught the muted clink of caps and the swirl of mixing. Marianne chattered on, her tone perpetually a notch too amplified, like addressing an eavesdropper nearby. "Paul's faring better this morning," she blurted out, freezing me mid-step. Paul, John's dad. He'd spent months bedridden in a hazy fog, with physicians murmuring about comfort measures and targeted relief. His calls came as faint murmurs like leaves brushing. At times, he'd chat with me as though I remained the gal John first encountered in school. I'd respond like eternity stretched ahead. "He managed some of the broth," Marianne noted, "and the therapist mentions his complexion's improving." Her gaze drifted to John's grip on the serving dish. "You need to nourish yourself too, my boy. Don't let yourself waste away. Lisa, would you mind adding a dollop of that pesto to his?" I forced a grin. "Sure thing." I unscrewed the top, and a potent whiff assaulted me. Parsley, sure, but underneath lurked an acrid, tangy edge I couldn't place. "What's the rest of it?" I inquired. "Just basics," Marianne replied. "Bit of yarrow, touch of valerian, ancient kinfolk cures. Naturally, you're unfamiliar." She tilted her head my way, as if bestowing some deep revelation. I spooned a bit onto John's portion, then a smidge on mine. "Perhaps I'm overthinking," I mused. "Herbs probably release odd scents when ground up." John savored the initial bite. "Wonderful," he declared, flashing her that tender, youthful grin unique to their bond. I dug in as well. The taste packed a punch, clinging to my palate. Later, a residue persisted, a rasp, a residue begging to be rinsed. I sipped water. "This is tasty," I managed, "truly excellent." Once Marianne departed post-meal, the atmosphere lightened instantly with the door's click. John tidied up, humming lightly until the tune faltered. He braced against the counter, offbeat. "You all right?" I probed. "Fine." he assured. Just a touch lightheaded. He brushed it aside and headed to the den. 60 minutes on, he reclined on the couch, palm pressed to his brow. Pounding head, he muttered, and a touch nauseous. I fetched hydration, settled beside him, and rubbed his limb. Could be lack of rest, I suggested. He agreed, despite us knowing better. He roused twice overnight, lingering once in the lavatory. Dawn brought ashen tones to his face, and I insisted we skip errands. He resisted briefly before relenting. Come Tuesday, vitality returned. Wednesday saw him chuckling over a co-worker's quip, leading me to wonder if Marianne's presence simply heightened our nerves. Him due to their tie, me because I'd yet to master asserting myself against her. She could light up in front of her without drawing any odd stares. A couple of weeks afterward, Marianne dropped by once more. On this occasion, she arrived with a poppy seed loaf. "Watch out," John teased. "You trying to knock us out." Marianne merely offered a slim smile that barely qualified as amusement. "Stop being ridiculous," she replied. "I have everything under control." I mused silently. "Oh, you certainly do." The dessert came across as sugary and dense. That night, John mentioned feeling exhausted, utterly drained. He headed to bed around 9:15. While scrubbing the plates, I caught the sound of his steady breaths from the bedroom, followed by an unfamiliar murmur. I hurried over. "You all right?" "Not great," he murmured softly. "Nothing major. Just rest." But sleep eluded me. Instead, I fetched a basin, placed a damp cloth across his brow. The place fell silent. A bus rumbled past on the street. Laughter echoed from the walkway below, and a nagging unease stirred within me. One I wasn't ready to label as doubt just yet. Perhaps it stemmed from pressure, or the treat, or some bug going around. I pushed myself to latch onto logical explanations. It nearly convinced me. Come morning, John appeared ashen, yet he dragged himself to the office. As he slung on his bag, I gazed at him and thought, "You're my anchor. Don't leave." At the outset, I jotted down notes from sheer idleness. Soon it turned into a habit because I adore tidy lists, and putting thoughts on paper often sharpens them. So I noted, Saturday's soup with pesto, dizzy spells, queasiness, migraines. Then, after another fortnight, the poppy seed cake, upset stomach, weariness. In the gaps, I added no issues, and beside that, in brackets, no drop-in. I was unnerving myself, so I stashed the paper away in a drawer. Still, I pulled it out the following Monday when John rang that evening. Mom's swinging by soon to drop off some calming tea for the tension. I uttered, "Oh," noticing how my tone pitched upward unnaturally. "I'll be back by 7, he added. "Relax, sweetie." Totally relaxed. Marianne showed up at 7:30. She carried a scent evoking dusty herbal shops. "It's got lemon balm," she explained, "plus a touch of hops." She set the flask down, then presumptuously grabbed our cups from the shelf on her own. John requires calm and serenity. "Sometimes you get him all wound up, Lisa. You're quite the pusher." Her grin suggested it was meant affectionately. I acted oblivious. John accepted the brew. "Cheers, Mom." He sipped, and I fixated on his neck as it bobbed, like the answer hid right there. I nursed my glass of water. Afterward, once she'd gone, we lounged side by side on the couch, catching fragments of a program neither of us tracked. John rested his head against me. I ran my fingers through his locks, inhaled that comforting, earthy aroma from his skin, like sanctuary itself, and suddenly his frame grew leaden, impossibly so. "Exhausted," he muttered. He rose unsteadily, tripped slightly, steadied, and forced a grin. "All good." Outwardly, I mirrored his expression, but inwardly, I gripped an unseen marker, keen and pointed. Monday's tea, profound exhaustion. That evening, I jolted awake from a nightmare where I lingered in an unfamiliar galley, watching a hand endlessly mix a cauldron that emitted no vapor. A single term lingered in my mind, acrid. The following dawn, Post John's departure, I unscrewed the container. Lemon balm wafted out. Hops, possibly. Yet something off lurked beneath, that discordant undertone clashing with my notion of a home cure. With a ladle, I scooped some into a preserves container, affixed a label, Marianne's T3. I slid it to the fridge's rear, concealed by Elsa. Shame washed over me, yet simultaneously clarity struck like an alarm. I resisted searching online. For now. I gripped the routine, messages, updates, the dependable tasks to tick away. Near midday, John phoned. "I'm fantastic," he claimed. "Mom nailed it." The infusion hit the spot. I responded, "Wonderful," though my mouth held a metallic tang. That night, Marianne rang. "How's my son holding up?" "He's doing well," I assured. She exhaled audibly as if anticipating confirmation. "See," she noted, "you simply guide events toward the proper path." I ended the call and scribbled, "Tuesday, doing all right." 48 hours on, the ongoing murmur that had buzzed faintly for months escalated into stark reality. Paul endured a terrible stretch. Marianne posted in our kin chat, "Hardly touching food, dozing constantly. Doc insists we address some matters now." John hopped in his vehicle right away and sped to Gresham. I remained at home. A meeting loomed that I couldn't shift, and guilt gnawed at me for not abandoning it all. When John returned late, his fatigue hit so hard I held back further queries. We curled up intimately, his spine to my midsection, and I embraced him like he craved guidance through the darkness. The subsequent afternoon, Marianne visited us. Briefly, she messaged. She carried a delicate stock, ideal for soothing frayed edges. This round, I hovered in the scullery as she heated it. I fussed over utensils, that outdated urge to fade into the backdrop while observing keenly. Marianne swirled the liquid. Her gestures held an odd solemnity akin to some observance. "I'd love to teach you a couple of plant-based remedies one day, Lisa," she remarked without glancing. She stared at me. "You need to back a man up." "I back John," I replied. My tone came out steady. I felt a surge of pride in that. She set the spoon aside, flashed that smile once more. Just a faint curve. "I get it." John dug in. He complimented the dish. Later that evening, he stirred awake. Waves of sickness hit him, his head reeling. I gripped the basin. I clutched the damp rag. I held my own breath. "Come morning," he massaged his throat. "Could be some virus." I agreed with a nod, perhaps. Later, I lingered under the spray in the bathroom, cranking the heat until my flesh flushed crimson. Either this was all in my mind or something deeply off was unfolding. Memories flooded in. Paul's name, the physician's advice, that chat in the family thread, the phrase, "look after him." I recalled Marianne's exact movements, the flask she carried, the lingering flavor. Emerging from the steam, I spotted Marianne waiting in the corridor. She had her own set of keys. "Just popping by to see how everything's going," she remarked with such ease that a shiver ran through me. "John catching some rest." "Yeah," I answered. My pulse thumped loud in my head. "You still hold on to that key." I wondered aloud once we reached the cooking area. Figured it might come in handy. "Naturally," she replied. "I'm his mom, and he's my son. Those aren't at odds." I swung open the refrigerator door, positioning myself so she couldn't glimpse me, sliding Marianne's T3 container slightly aside. No clue what drove me, but instinct screamed. No more passive watching. I had to secure the evidence before it vanished. That night, with John dozing, I settled at the dining counter and laid out my notes. I jotted the dates, the hours, the items Marianne delivered, John's responses. Connections emerged with arrows, links formed in lines. Part of me worried I was blowing it out of proportion, yet there it was, the rhythm revealing itself when laid bare. Drop-in, ingestion, illness, rebound, drop-in, ingestion, illness. I fixed my gaze on the entries until they blurred into nonsense. Then I rose, slipped into the sleeping quarters, perched on the bed's side, and clasped his fingers. I murmured, "I'm watching out for you." Unsure if the vow was for him or my own resolve. In my sleep that night, A vast banquet appeared. All of us gathered. John, Marianne, Paul, myself. Steaming vessels dotted the surface, shining invitingly. But each scoop I lifted rang hollow. The buzzer jolted me alert, and dread settled in, like I'd stepped into a web without retreat. At dawn, I resolved to shift it all. I'd confront John directly, no vague nudges, no rushed words, no sheepish grin softening the blow. Straightforward, because affection demands protection, not just clinging. I brewed the coffee, the flat filled with scents that bound us over time. Grounds, comfort, subtle grief. John stepped from the washroom, locks dripping, wrapped in terry cloth. He appeared healthy despite the pallor, strong yet altered. "Take a seat for a moment," I suggested. He complied. That lopsided grin of his softened my insides as always. "What's on your mind?" I inhaled sharply. "Something tells me," I began, my words quivering just a bit. "You always get sicker right after your mother's visits. I've tracked it. Soups, pastries, brews, stews. Illness follows every time. And I suspect foul play." Silence stretched. Then a flicker crossed his features. Not hostile, merely subtle. A fleeting shade across his brow. "Lisa," he uttered deliberately. "Come on, you know how you get analyzing everything to death." "I get it," I conceded, "but check the records." He avoided them. Instead, he squeezed my palm. "Mom would never harm me, not ever. She's quirky at times, but her love's real." I dipped my head. I know she cares. The falsehood stung, just pointing out the trend. He grinned like he was soothing a kid. "It's touching, your concern. Seriously, trust me on this. Nothing's amiss." "I trust you," I claimed, knowing the deceit. "But I won't quit observing." He rose, pressed lips to my brow. "Handle it your way. I'll savor this brew." He raised the cup, no hint of unease. I chuckled, though mirth escaped me. As the entryway clicked shut after him, I returned to the counter and eyed my chart, willing it to reveal secrets. A bus rumbled past outside. A parent steered a pram nearby. A bin clanged in the distance. Paul's image surfaced, that subtle smirk over the line. Wills, plans, terms like living will. Marianne's motions in our space. First time I named the shadow gnawing within, doubt. I retrieved the preserve container from the cold compartment, tilting it toward the glow. Specks danced inside, like the contents hid more than met the eye. I sealed it firm, replaced it, snatched my coat and ring of keys, and headed out. Destination unclear, only fleeing the void toward clarity. The breeze carried damp foliage and iron. I hiked my neckline and formed another quiet oath. If John doubts me still, I'll gather proof until the TR doubt has ceased to be an option. Even someone who's never questioned their own mother's motives now has to recognize the reality unfolding right in front of us. Heading toward the bus stop, my phone buzzed. A text popped up in the family chat from Marianne, dropping in for a quick visit this evening. I whipped up something gentle for John. Calms the nerves. I froze in place, stared at the display. My fingertips turned icy. Then I typed back, "Can't wait." My pulse echoed in every step along the pavement. I realized this was merely the start, and I, Lisa, refused to accept that resentment was just an ordinary seasoning. I'd trace that lingering bitterness back to its origin. Uttering the word suspicion felt like triggering a mechanism. From that moment, acting like all was well became impossible. One morning in the bathroom, applying makeup before heading to the office, while tracing the eyeliner, I caught the uncertainty in my reflection. "Are you exaggerating, Lisa, or are you at last perceiving the truth?" John picked up on my subdued mood. "You all right?" he'd inquire while stacking the dishwasher or lacing up his sneakers. "Fine," I'd reply. But that fine rang so hollow, even I struggled to buy it. Marianne showed up again that Friday night. Only briefly, she'd messaged in her typical way. Only briefly, invariably stretched to an hour or more. This visit included a dish of potato bake. Seasoned with nutmeg, she told John. "You adore nutmeg, right?" Her tone oozed warmth. I laid out the plates. John dug in and even chuckled at Marianne's cutting comment about my job at the firm. "Well, Lisa, it's more like a pastime than a real profession, huh?" I held my tongue as John brushed it aside. Once we'd finished eating, Marianne departed with her standard line. "Ring me if things overwhelm you." Words that actually implied the reverse. 2 hours on, John slumped in the den, cradling his head. "Feeling woozy," he muttered. "Probably overdid the meal." I settled beside him, resting a palm on his shoulder. Or perhaps I ingested the remainder. He wasn't ready for that idea. Not yet. That night, after he drifted off, I pulled out my notebook once more. Saturday, soup with pesto. Headaches, queasiness. Monday, tea. Utter exhaustion. Friday, bake. Vertigo. The connections I'd sketched and the trend taking shape stood out. Arrival, meal, ailment. I lingered under the kitchen light, attuned to John's uneven breaths filtering through the partition. It wasn't restful slumber, it resembled a battle. Come Sunday breakfast, I tried once again. "John," I started, "have you considered if it's the stuff your mom delivers?" He glanced up, startled. Bagel poised mid-air. "What are you getting at?" I proceeded cautiously. "Whenever she stops by, you end up feeling rough soon after." I documented it. He set the bagel aside and studied me intently. "Lisa, come on, do you really think my mother would harm me?" "I'm not sure," I whispered, "but the signs are there." He exhaled deeply, rose, and approached the pane. "Mom can wear you out, sure, but she'd never." He pivoted back. "You're coming across as delusional." That term struck deeper than anticipated. Delusional. I clamped my mouth shut and inclined my head. Perhaps, I conceded, or perhaps not. We avoided the subject the whole day. That night, he phoned his dad, whose voice came across frail yet tender. I perched nearby, catching only John's side. "Sure, Dad, got it. I'll handle Mom." Handle Mom. I jotted that in my notes, unsure of the reason. As I capped the pen, I vowed to myself, if John tuned me out, I'd gather irrefutable proof he'd have to confront head on. I kept wondering, why target only John? Why spare me? I sampled the offerings, too. Broth, dessert, bake. I at least nibbled a portion of each. Still, only he wound up laid out with spins or stomach upset. The key likely hid in the nuances. I served myself modest helpings, often just tasting to be courteous. John devoured heartily, always outpacing me. Then another detail surfaced. Marianne always urged larger servings for John. She'd practically insist he load up on the stew, the spread, the pastry. "This'll build you up, son." She'd coo with a grin. For me, she skimped, never piling on. At times, I'd notice her subtly directing the prime slice of bake or the choice bit of cake his way, treating me like a mere bystander who merited a polite nibble, but nothing essential. And perhaps, I reflected one night, that was deliberate. Maybe the substance in the food appeared in my share so minimally it barely registered, but in John's bowl, his mug, it built up, intensifying bit by bit. I resolved to move beyond mere recordings. Scribbles on a page meant little against John's label of delusion. I required tangible evidence, something I could silently set before him someday. A container, a fragment. A whiff of cake lingered in the air, impossible to dismiss. One jar was already chilling in the refrigerator. The remaining batches of Marianne's nerve tea. I'd marked them like a scientist tagging lab subjects. Marianne's tea. Batch 3. It was absurd. Still, having it on hand made me feel more fortified somehow. When she dropped by again, she arrived bearing a casserole. "It's hearty and restorative," she claimed, her words carrying the weight of an incantation. I lingered in the kitchen with her, feigning interest in stowing the utensils, and observed her gestures, the way she added spices, the rhythm of her stirring. Her actions were steady, methodical. Yet on 2 occasions she dipped quickly into her bag, as though intending to add an extra ingredient. I couldn't make out the details, only the subtle motion, the snap of her wrist, Later, after the meal, with John slumped on the couch in his usual drained state, I found myself alone in the kitchen once more. I spooned a bit from the dish into a plastic container and tagged it Casserole M2. Then I shoved it to the back of the fridge, concealed behind the milk where John wouldn't stumble upon it. I began viewing Marianne through new lenses. Her warmth had always rung false to me. I'd sensed that for ages, but now it struck me as deliberate camouflage. In every grin, I hunted for the hint that might unmask her. One time, as she placed a bowl of soup before me, her fingers brushed mine and she murmured, "You must look after him properly. He relies on you." Her tone was affectionate, yet her gaze darted beyond me for a split second, treating me like a mere bystander in her scheme. John, though, refused to entertain my concerns. My head's pounding once more. He grumbled that Tuesday night following Marianne's call. I settled beside him, clasped his hand. "John, I'm begging you. Trust what I'm saying. It always hits after her cooking." He managed a weak grin. "Lisa, you're spotting connections out of fear. Mom's only trying to assist. Is she really?" I whispered gently. He exhaled deeply, tugged the cover over his face. "No arguments, okay?" I remained there for what felt like hours, attuned to his uneven breaths, and reflected, it's hardly a battle if just one side is battling. How, in the dead of night, once he was out, I'd occasionally rise, head to the fridge, and retrieve the specimens. I'd line them up across the table, jars and tubs inscribed with dates and descriptions, my modest hoard of doubts. I'd sniff them. Once I even sampled a speck. It was sharp, so sharply acrid that I gulped down water right away to banish the flavor. Then I'd ponder, just how deep would I plunge? Ought I rush these to a testing facility, seek outside advice, or hold off until disaster struck? That Saturday, with Marianne present once more, the moment arrived. She'd steeped the tea, filled the cups, beamed, and chatted about nothing in particular. Then I could have sworn it happened. She stirred in something to John's mug, a fleeting instant, hardly noticeable, a single droplet from a vial. My pulse hammered. I realized that speaking up then would only convince John I was unhinged, so I held my tongue. Instead, I deliberately nudged my cup aside and abstained. Marianne noticed. A sharp, fleeting stare. No comment. And John. He sipped away. By bedtime that night, he was shivering under the sheets again. I perched at his bedside, gripped his hand, and my mind churned. If you won't buy into this, John, I'll extract you from her trap all by myself if that's what it takes. I vowed inwardly. Come the following encounter, I wouldn't merely watch in silence. I'd step in. I called out sick the next day, citing a collapsed work assignment, though truthfully, the world under me felt unsteady. I sensed that persisting even one more shift, plastering on smiles, preparing meals, offering solace, drifting into uneasy sleep without action, would leave me crumbling inward, unable to rise. Portland loomed drab under a misty drizzle that clung like fog. I drew my hood up and wandered aimlessly. I'd secured the plants and stashed the thermos with the leftover tea at the fridge's rear. The vessels bore their tags. The inventory hid in the kitchen cabinet. My proof. My quiet, private record. I paused outside the corner drugstore. I gazed at the displays brimming with vibrant boxes and ads touting soothing remedies, musing. Perhaps there's no ill intent. Perhaps it's mere cluelessness. Maybe Marianne's overloading on botanicals. Maybe she's blending stuff that clashes harmfully. Maybe her heart's in the right place, just not aligned with mine. I latched onto that idea since it felt kinder than the alternative. Stepping inside, the scent of antiseptic and cleanliness greeted me. A pharmacist with wire-free specs and a weary but benevolent expression manned the register. "Morning," he greeted. "What brings you in?" I gripped the counter's ledge. "I've got a peculiar query," I started, my words barely audible, then cleared my throat louder. "My spouse frequently receives herbal infusions, stews, those home cures from his mom, and soon after, he suffers. Vertigo, queasiness, profound exhaustion. Might that stem from the plants? He removed his glasses, set them down on the surface, and eyed me steadily. It can, he replied evenly. It all hinges on the quantity, the mix, the way it's prepared. Certain plants appear benign, yet they might trigger issues when taken in large amounts, and items touted as therapeutic herbs and home remedies can pack a serious punch at therapeutic levels. He waved his hand lightly, steering clear of the term risky, though it was a broad overview. Your account lacks details, he added. I get it, I replied, feeling moisture gathering in my eyes. I have no intention of pointing fingers. I simply need to figure out the root of this. He inclined his head gradually, like he'd fielded variations of that query countless times. I can't run tests here at the pharmacy, he explained, but should you suspect something off in the meals or drinks, consult a physician. Poison hotlines are available too. They offer guidance on potential intolerances. Then he angled his head, his tone gentling. If you spot a recurring issue, save the evidence. Leave it untouched. Avoid transferring it to different vessels. Keep it chilled. I dipped my chin in acknowledgement. I've been handling it that way, I told him, surprised by my own detached, matter-of-fact delivery. He regarded me as though he'd grasped the essence without further words. Just one other point, he tacked on. Should your spouse show signs, seek professional evaluation right away. Check his cardiovascular health, blood tests, liver function. No delays, he emphasized with a brief halt, and discuss it with him. Not only the obvious stuff, but his limits, too. Mother's boundaries can stretch quite far. I drew in a steadying breath. Thank you, I murmured. That's reassuring. On the street, I brushed away the tears using my cuff. I perched on the pharmacy's front stairs and, with fingers gone clumsy, punched in a contact on my cell. The Oregon Poison Center. My pulse thrummed like it echoed through the line. A composed voice responded, inquiring about the matter. I outlined it precisely, omitting identities and blame. I'm not sure if I'm blowing this out of proportion, I wrapped up, but the repetition terrifies me. Calling was the smart move, the voice assured me, straightforward and supportive. If effects emerge, pursue medical attention without hesitation. Preserve all specimens and steer clear of amateur assessments. We can't opine on imagined toxins, but we urge thorough clinical records. The voice methodically echoed the essentials I craved. Seek support, don't bottle it up. Have it vetted by experts. I jotted it down like a diligent pupil. After ending the call, I reached out to the sole friend who never boxed me in, Sophie. Our bond dated back to university days. Sophie listens in a way that demands zero from you. Swing by, she invited. I'll brew some joe and hear you out. No judgments about losing it. Her Portland Hawthorne district apartment carried scents of wax tapers and buffed hardwood. Sophie donned a baggy knit top. She drew me into an embrace, lingering a beat past the norm. Spill it all. I recounted the pesto, the brew, the bake, the flask, the drip from the vial, John's weariness, the roster, the apothecary visit, the hotline chat. I spoke until my voice rasped, sipping her brew that evoked serenity. What's John's take? She probed at last. I fixed on my palms. He chalks it up to my nerves. Paranoid, he called it. Sophie's features contorted. Textbook response. When a woman's gut screams, they dismiss it as hysteria. And you're the methodical, level-headed type. She halted. Lisa, hear me out. You know I'm not one for exaggeration. If you're voicing this, it's real. And if it's real, prioritize records and a family supporter in his kin. I echoed, dazed. Who? That relative who clashed with Marianne. Her name, Teresa. I raised my gaze. Aunt Teresa, Paul's sibling, the younger one. The lady who observed silently at reunions, yet missed nothing. The same who once furtively handed me a sweet during my inaugural holiday escape from Marianne's cutting words. Exactly, I affirmed. Reach out to Teresa. I shook my head. What do I even tell her? That I suspect your brother's wife is harming my partner, express concern, request her input. Nothing more. Sophie rested her palm on my arm. And visit Paul. To gauge Marianne's tactics, head there. Later that day, I headed to Gresham. Traffic crawled on the highway. Clouds pressed down. The Weber's Row home sat at the cul-de-sac's edge. Uniform gravel patches out front. Identical hedges. That standard suburban courtesy. I inhaled deeply and pressed the chime. Marianne swung the door wide. Lisa, her tone nearly lilting. Lovely surprise. A heads-up via message would do, but enter. Please, enter. I crossed the threshold into the foyer. The odor struck as ever. Lavender blended with polish, plus an indefinable edge, sharp at the nostrils. I pictured it seeping into linens, surfaces, soles. Paul's resting, Marianne noted. He's under the weather today. Today. She uttered it in that matter-of-fact way. The downpour follows its natural rhythm. Could I visit him briefly? I inquired. She paused just a second before agreeing with a nod. Certainly. Her palm swept across my shoulder, guiding me gently. But keep it short. Paul rested in the dim room, his flesh pale and fragile like tissue, his palms resting atop the coverlet. I perched beside the mattress and clasped his hand in my own. "Hey, Papa Paul," I murmured. I'd used that name since our marriage, and he'd always grinned like it was our private secret. His lids fluttered slightly. "Lisa," he rasped without inflection, and I fought back a lump in my throat. "It's me," I replied. "I'm looking after John." I lingered there, chatting idly about the shuttle, about Inga and Elsa, about trivial matters. As I rose, I caught what might have been a faint acknowledgement. Perhaps it was my imagination. Still, I carried that hope with me. In the kitchen, Marianne bustled about. Bundles of parched herbs sat on the counter, bound tidily with string. Tiny metal tins bore inscriptions: St. John's wort, yarrow, lemon balm. I didn't touch them, just glanced over. Tucked behind was an unmarked amber vial. As my gaze landed on it, Marianne smoothly tucked it away into the cupboard. The gesture was so subtle, so habitual, it might escape notice. Not mine, though. "I'll brew some tea shortly," she announced. "For Paul, but I'll fix one for you as well. You girls are forever in a hurry. This'll soothe you." "Thanks," I managed, my mouth turning arid. My cell buzzed. I'd texted Teresa earlier with a vague note. "At Marianne's this afternoon. Mind a quick chat?" "Lisa?" Teresa murmured into the line, her voice gentle. "I can stroll the block if you want a breath of air. Meet at the playground corner." I snatched my coat. "Heading out for a moment," I told Marianne, "to get some air." She inclined her head, kettle already in hand. "Do it out there." The air carried the scent of wet soil. Teresa waited by the playground railing, clad in a navy jacket, her silver locks pulled into a neat twist. Her gaze seemed sharper than I recalled. "You're troubled," she observed. "No need for a query." "Yeah." We ambled along together at an easy pace. I shared only the essentials, not the full tale. Teresa listened without interruption until I'd wrapped up. Then she halted. "Lisa," she began. I'd guessed it plenty, but not exactly this. She fumbled for phrasing. "Marianne's, well, territorial, particularly when she senses control fading. Paul's fading from her grasp," I added, wincing at the edge in my words. Teresa dipped her chin. "He's gravely ill." She compressed her mouth. "There's a will involved." "Not one to spread rumors on such matters," she continued, "but you ought to grasp the setup. Long back, Paul set his affairs in order. Should John outlive him, there's a 30-day window or similar provision. John claims his portion outright, no oversight. If John precedes him, it all reverts to Marianne, meant as protection for the lad back then. Nobody foresaw." Her voice faded. "John's their sole kid. You realize?" A wave of vertigo hit me. I had to lean against the bench's rear. I knew John was an only son, yet this detail left me reeling. 30 days. A buffer, a gap, perhaps an incentive. Not implying Marianne's up to no good, Teresa rushed on, as if scanning my mind, just that she clings fiercely to her vision of order and at times. She raised her palms. At times she blurs affection with dominance. At times, I echoed flatly. Teresa rested her fingers on my arm. Watch over yourself and John. If anything concrete catches your eye, don't tackle it solo. Rally support or alert authorities, but avoid risky lone ventures. I agreed. Appreciate it. Returning inside, I found the tea piping hot on the table. 2 mugs. Here, Marianne coaxed quietly, for your tension. I'll have it soon, I replied. Gotta run. I forced a grin like I was dashing for a ride that wouldn't arrive. Driving back, I dialed Dr. Thompson, our steady family physician, steady as an oak. I'd like to schedule for my spouse, I stated. He's been battling ongoing vertigo, queasiness, and utter exhaustion for weeks now. I nearly slipped, always following. No, in spells. Drop by tomorrow at 8, pre-clinic, he suggested. We can discuss privately. Have him join. Unsure if he will. Insist, Dr. Thompson urged kindly, drawing an unintended chuckle from me despite my mood. That night over supper, I turned to John. Mind a visit to Dr. Thompson first thing tomorrow, just routine. Labs, check the flow. For my sake, to ease my worries. His eyes held mine steadily. For your calm and your well-being. He massaged his brow. Fine, he conceded. Fine. Relief nearly brought tears. I tossed fitfully that night, ticking off the minutes to dawn. In one alert spell, I rose, headed to the kitchen, and pulled my samples from the cooler. I sorted them chronologically, snapped pics on my device, and set a little log beside. Date, hour, contents, effect, length. It felt absurd, nitpicky, and excessive, yet it was the sole anchor holding my nerves steady. My mind drifted to Marianne's fingers, the amber vial, Teresa's advice, that 30-day buffer. Her words echoed in my ears like a verdict drifting through corridors, seeping beneath each threshold. I pictured Paul in his dim chamber, the fragile veil across his palms, the hushed presence of Lisa. This household struck me as woven from strands, stretched to their limit, ready to unravel at the fraying of a single one. I settled beside John once more. Even asleep, he shifted toward me, draping his arm as though I were his safe harbor. I've got you, I murmured into the shadows, and I'm holding on tight. Come morning. We waited in Dr. Thompson's reception area. John idly leafed through a periodical featuring a sunlit breaker, halted mid-crash on its glossy front. I gazed at him. This partner I'd selected, the one I'd wed, with whom I'd christened our greenery. We form a tale reserved solely for us to narrate. Still, there's an outsider lurking with that brown flask, jotting down covert observations. Dr. Thompson ushered us inside ahead of schedule. He paid attention, he posed inquiries. How frequently? When did it start? Specific dishes? What follows? He approved of my notes. Smart move putting that in writing. Next, he checked John over, checking his vital signs, auscultating his chest, and sampling his blood. Nothing alarming jumps out right now, he noted, but let's await the tests. His eyes met John's. Indulge in what appeals to you, not whatever's served up by others. If certain items leave you off, avoid them. John offered a bashful grin. Mom's intentions are good. That's beside the point, Dr. Thompson replied gently. The real issue is your post-meal state. Tune into your own signals, not the packaging. Outdoors, John trailed me wordlessly. At last he spoke. I'm not some test subject of yours. You're my spouse, I countered, and I'm fighting to keep you safe. He halted. Lisa? His stare blended weariness with an unreadable flicker. There are moments I can't tell if you're rescuing me or crowding me out. The sting pierced deep, stealing my breath for an instant. Perhaps I can't always draw a clean line between them, I admitted, but I'm giving it my all. He dipped his head, closed the gap, and pressed his brow to mine. I get that. Back at the house, Marianne fired off a message in the group thread. Dropping in briefly this evening, John. I've got something gentle for you. Just a touch. It'll ease your rest. I stared at the words like they sprawled across my counter. Then with steady composure, I typed, "Stop by at 5 if you'd like." In the kitchen, I froze. No tidying, no arranging, no handling a thing. Palms flat on the surface, I voiced into the vacant space. No more. From the cabinet, I retrieved my outdated device, the one with the wobbly lens, and propped it atop the refrigerator, tucked partially behind the herb jars, so its gaze fixed on the workspace. I hit record and sensed my pulse echoing doubly, once within me, once through that mute, watchful surrogate. Pride evaded me. Here I was, covertly capturing footage because no one would otherwise credit my account. A wife amassing proof to shield her partner from his mother's grasp. Minutes shy of 5, footfalls ascended the stairs. Marianne was crooning softly. She always did right before turning the key. My fingers brushed the appliance, as if soothing it. "Quiet now," I breathed. And there she was, filling our space, neutral jacket, polished rouge, welcoming curve. "Hello, loves," she greeted. "I fetched something soothing." She brandished the sack. "This'll steady those jitters." I met her eyes, reflecting. I've prepared my own offering, a limit. A serene shift settled in me, not icy, serene, like a lake, stilling as the breeze fades. "How thoughtful," I replied. "Shall we prepare the meal?" Precisely at 5 the chime sounded. I'd already activated the vintage gadget perched on the fridge. The indicator glowed faintly. Its power wouldn't hold forever, but 60 minutes would suffice. My pulse throbbed to my extremities as the lock clicked. "Hello, loves." Marianne filled the entryway per usual, jacket in soft tan, makeup impeccable, locks impeccably arranged. She clutched a sack that clinked faintly. "I've got a wee boost for my son." John emerged from the lounge, managing a weary smile. "Hi, Mom." He offered a quick embrace. She clung longer than called for. "You're looking drawn," she observed right away. "Good thing I came prepared." I lingered in the kitchen, compelling an air of ease. My grip rested open on the counter, betraying nothing. From the tote, Marianne extracted a lidded dish and unveiled it. Some light herb-infused grains, simple on the stomach, paired with a nervine dressing. She set a diminutive vessel of murky elixir on the surface. "Take a seat, John," she urged. "I'll plate it up." "Appreciate it, Mom," he muttered. I took a step back and leaned against the wall, watching closely. Her actions flowed with confidence and ease. She lifted the lid from the dish, scooped rice onto the plate, and drizzled the sauce on top. In a fleeting instant, almost unnoticed, she glanced sideways to where her handbag sat. For just a second, a little vial appeared, and a single droplet landed directly on the food before she mixed it all together. My breath hitched in my throat. I clamped my mouth shut to stifle any noise. "Here you go, sweetheart," she murmured gently, setting the plate down in front of John. "Dig in. You'll start feeling better in no time." He picked up the fork and started eating. I kept my eyes on him as he chewed, swallowed, and then grinned. "This hits the spot." "Naturally," Marianne replied. She ran her hand along his arm, her eyes locking onto mine. That stare lingered too long, as though she realized I'd caught the whole thing. I managed to force a smile. "Looks delicious," I said, despite the nausea churning inside me. "I'll grab a bite later." Marianne gave a pleased nod. An hour after she'd left, John was back on the couch, looking ashen, sweat beading on his brow, his fingers quivering. "Feeling woozy again," he muttered. "Guess it really is some kind of virus." I fetched him a glass of water and laid a damp cloth across his forehead. "Just relax," I said quietly, even as turmoil boiled within me. Once he drifted off to sleep, I slipped into the kitchen. My fingers shook as I pulled the phone from beside the refrigerator. I halted the video, inhaled deeply, and exhaled gradually. Then I sank into a chair at the table and hit play. The footage was unsteady and fuzzy, but the details stood out sharp enough. There was Marianne, pulling the tiny bottle from her bag and letting that drop fall onto the plate right before blending it in. A wave of heat and chills swept over me simultaneously. Proof, right there in front of me. I remained seated for what felt like ages, fixated on the compact display. A whirlwind of ideas raced through my mind. Should I share this with John? Would he even trust my account? Or would it shatter his perfect view of his mom in an instant? The kitchen stayed hushed. Just the low buzz of the fridge filled the air, and deep down, I understood. No going back now. I held off until John appeared more alert the following morning. The previous night had been fitful. He'd moaned and shifted restlessly, perspiration glistening on his skin. I dabbed it away, offered him sips of water, and clasped his hand. Throughout it all, the phone burned like a hidden weight in my drawer. Lisa. He met my gaze, his eyes weary yet kind. You seem exhausted, like you didn't get any rest. You're right, I didn't, I admitted. I perched on the bed's edge and grasped his hand. John, there's something you need to see. He furrowed his brow. Not now. I've got this pounding headache. That's exactly why, especially now, I cut in gently, because this concerns your headaches, your health. I rose, retrieved the phone, and settled back beside him. My hands quivered a bit as I launched the video. Please, just view it once. Then you can call me paranoid if you want. He glanced at me, then the screen. I started the playback. The clip played on. Marianne appeared, out of focus but unmistakable. Her hands prepped the plate. The arm darted briefly to the handbag. The vial emerged. The droplets splashed down. John's expression shifted while he viewed it. Initial doubt, followed by fury, then an expression resembling hurt. He paused it. That could be anything. Vitamins, maybe, or some natural supplement. Mom does stuff like that. She's full of old-school remedies, John. My voice cracked. You witnessed it yourself. She slipped something into your meal without a word. Perhaps she kept it quiet to spare your nerves. He pushed back. You get worked up over these things. I gaped at him. Worked up? Every week you're laid out with vertigo, queasiness, migraines, always right after she stops by, and I'm the dramatic one. He raked his fingers through his hair, got to his feet, and paced the room. That's my mom, Lisa. She brought me up. She's been my rock my whole life. His tone faltered. You can't seriously think I'd buy that she's out to hurt me. I'm asking you to protect yourself, I murmured, to figure out what's really going on. I can't bear the thought of losing you, John. He halted and faced me. Conflict swirled in his stare. And if you're mistaken, if your worries making you see things that aren't there and you're smearing my mom unfairly, I extended the phone toward him. Then tell me what this is. Why the secrecy? Why do you always fall ill after her visits? Please, John, face the truth. He eyed the device, then me, and I sensed the battle inside him. Family ties clashing with logic, kinship against our bond. I don't know, he whispered. Honestly, I just don't. I got up, approached him, and cupped his cheeks in my palms. You need to decide, John. Not her versus me, but unquestioning faith against your very survival. He regarded me, moisture gathering in his eyes. Give me a moment to process. A moment, I echoed, sharper than intended. That's the one thing we might be short on. I walked out of the bedroom, headed to the kitchen, and braced myself against the counter. My knees buckled beneath me. The phone rested in my grip like a fragment. It was a harsh reality, one that felt burdensome yet pointless on its own. Evidence by itself wouldn't suffice. I needed to probe further, uncover the real motivation behind Marianne's actions. And I had a hunch that the truth lay not in my kitchen, but hidden within the tangled web of John's family dynamics, linked to Paul, his last testament, and whatever Marianne was so eager to seize for her own gain. The period following the video footage blurred into a tense tightrope walk between routine life and utter despair, between forcing smiles and silently raging within. John headed off to his job, acting as if all was fine. I followed suit. Still, that recording hovered between us like an unseen barrier. We hardly mentioned it any longer, yet it lingered in every look we exchanged. If I aimed to protect John, grasping Marianne's reasons was essential. No parent poisons their child without some twisted justification. The revelation arrived courtesy of Aunt Teresa. I'd messaged her shortly after our last chat. Could we talk privately? Her response came short and to the point. Tomorrow at 4 p.m., the cafe near the city park. The spot had a vintage charm with crisp white linens on the tables and robust coffee poured into sturdy china cups. Teresa was already seated, her gray jacket draped over the chair's rear, fingers interlaced. Her gaze held steady caution. "Lisa," she started gently, just as I settled in, "you must watch yourself. I realize you're gathering proof, but Marianne's no fool. She'll sense if you're keeping tabs on her." "I captured something on video," I admitted, "the way she added a droplet from a vial to John's meal." Teresa shut her eyes as though absorbing a sharp blow. "I figured as much. But this severe," she breathed out, "that erases any uncertainty." I pressed closer. Yet why? How could a mother inflict that on her boy? She paused at length, idly swirling her untouched brew. At last she spoke. "It stems from Paul and his will." She detailed how he'd set it all up long before. A duly authenticated document precisely drafted. Upon his passing, the property would split evenly, half to Marianne, the rest to John. Paul's intent was to ensure John's self-sufficiency, regardless of Marianne's greed for the full pot. However, a provision existed, a sly provision in the law. Should John perish within 30 days of Paul's death, Teresa continued, his portion shifts straight back to Marianne. No complications, no obstacles. She'd inherit it all. I gaped at her, pulse thumping in my chest. So if Paul goes and John follows soon after, Marianne claims the lot, the home, the funds, the investments, everything. Dizziness washed over me. "And you think," Teresa affirmed with gravity, "I think Marianne craves it all solely for her. She's driven by it forever. Dominance, holdings, influence, that's her guiding principle. With Paul slipping away now, she's gripping fiercely at what's hers, the wealth, the property, the stability. To her, that excuses any atrocity." I squeezed my eyelids shut. Images flooded in, Paul's frail grip, the perspiration beading on John's brow, Marianne's tone. Good for the nerves. It all clicked into a vicious mosaic. "John's blind to it," I murmured. "He shields her constantly." Teresa rested her palm atop mine. "Show him the incentive, then. He remains unaware of that stipulation." Paul avoided stirring trouble. He simply assured John, "You're secure." But the fine points. Those stayed between Marianne and me. I dipped my head. That's our breakthrough. Teresa fixed me with an intense stare. "Lisa, you've got resilience, but tread lightly. Marianne's aware you're obstructing her, and those who stoop this low won't balk at targeting you next." A chill traced my back. Suddenly it hit me. The peril extended beyond John to include myself. Later, as I returned home, the urban buzz enveloped everything. Rumbling buses, blaring horns, kids' joyful shouts. The world appeared ordinary, but within, chaos reigned. Now I grasped Marianne's drive, a sinister, repugnant one, and I realized action was urgent before disaster struck. Whether it was bravery or folly, I dialed Marianne anyway. "Could you stop by tomorrow?" I inquired, striving for composure. "Certainly, dear," she cooed, her insincere grin audible even remotely. "I'll whip up something gentle for John." I ended the call and fixated on my device for ages. Gentle. Venom always laced her utterances. The following afternoon, she arrived precisely at 5. "Lisa," she greeted upon my opening the door, "you're glowing today." Her scrutiny swept my features, probing, appraising. "Step inside," I replied tersely. John had stayed late at the office by design. I preferred facing her solo this round. In the kitchen, Marianne set a plastic container down. "Veggie broth to ease John's digestion." "Don't bother," I stated evenly, my tone icy. "He won't touch it." Her gaze sharpened. "What's that supposed to imply?" I inhaled steadily. "I know your game, Marianne. I've witnessed it. I've recorded it." A flicker crossed her expression. Then came a quick, biting chuckle. "Recorded? Goodness, Lisa, your creativity runs wild." Creativity. From my pocket, I drew the phone and raised it. "A droplet from your vial." She slipped the substance into John's dish without anyone noticing. "You can't seriously claim that was innocent." She paused for a beat, her gaze sharpening. Then she settled into her chair, fingers interlaced atop the tabletop. "So what if it was?" she replied. Her tone stayed hushed, yet razor sharp. "What do you plan to do next?" My breath hitched. The excuses were over. The pretended shock had vanished. Only that chilling query remained. "Why?" I murmured. "Why target your own child like this?" Her lips curved into a grin devoid of any kindness. "Because he's blocking my path." My pulse stuttered. "Blocking what?" "For what's rightfully mine," she stated evenly. "Once Paul passes, and it won't be long, it's all coming to me. The property, the fortune, the stability I've slaved for, but solely if John's out of the picture. Simple as that." Nausea twisted in my gut. "That's madness." "No," she shot back. "That's fairness. I've devoted my existence to this household. I gave up everything. I tended to Paul. I held this place together. And now I claim my reward. John's still got years ahead. He's got you. He doesn't require it all. He deserves his future." My words broke. "He's your boy, for heaven's sake." For the briefest instant, a shadow crossed her eyes. Perhaps remorse, perhaps sorrow. Then it faded. "You can't grasp it," she murmured gently. "You're merely the newcomer. You'll depart eventually, but me, I'll endure." I stood frozen, phone clutched tightly. For the first time, I realized I confronted a woman unbound by limits. "If you tamper with his meals one more time," I breathed, "I promise you, Marianne, I'll alert the authorities, and you'll forfeit it all. Every bit." She leaned in nearer, her cloying floral fragrance enveloping me. "Watch yourself, Lisa," she warned. "Tread lightly. Occasionally, the good folks falter and the villains prevail. Make certain you're aligned correctly." With that, she rose, snatched the plastic container, and exited. Her steps resounded down the corridor. The door banged closed. I remained solitary in the kitchen, pulse thundering, legs unsteady. This wasn't mere doubt anymore, not just a habit, not some fluke. It was war, and it had only just ignited. When John returned home that night, well after dark, I lingered in the kitchen. The overhead light stayed off. Just the faint glow from the sink fixture illuminated the space. The phone rested beside me on the counter, a mute observer to the confrontation. "Lisa." He dropped his things and approached. "Why are you sitting here shrouded in shadows?" I raised my face. My throat felt raw. "Your mother stopped by." He offered a weary grin. "Yeah, I figured. She messaged about dropping off some broth. She explained it all." He halted. "What?" I drew in a shaky breath, my fingers quivering. "That she's poisoning you, that she's spiking your meals, and the reason." He creased his brow gradually, sinking into the seat across from me. "Lisa." "John, hear me out." My voice fractured. "She aims to end you so she inherits Solo after your dad's gone." A heavy quiet fell. Then came his brief, incredulous chuckle. "That's ridiculous. My own mother. The one who nurtured me, who's watched over Dad for ages. I smacked the surface before me. I witnessed it. I captured it on video. And today, she admitted it outright." His expression hardened. What? What exactly did she utter? I recited her statements, each one as frigid as when they'd escaped her lips. John stands in my way. When Paul goes, it all becomes mine. John's features shifted. He fixed his stare on the wood, as though dodging my eyes. That can't possibly be real. His words were faint. John, I said softly, tears stinging my vision. I get she's family, but I vow to you she intends you harm. I've got proof. Her own admission. Trust what I've shared. He leaped to his feet, striding across the floor, fingers raking through his locks. You expect me to swallow that my mother wishes me dead? How can I wrap my head around it? How? All I'm urging is that you believe your instincts. I rose too, seizing his wrist. Think back. Each visit from her left you reeling. Not prior, not afterward, only during. Your instincts are yelling the reality, yet you're turning away. His grip shook in my hold. He met my look, turmoil swirling in his depths. She's my mother, Lisa. My mother. I can't paint her as some villain. And I'm your partner, I replied in a hush. I refuse to see you slip away. Backing her puts your existence at stake. He shut his eyes, jaw clenched for what felt like ages. At last he breathed. I'm lost on whom to trust. I released him and retreated a pace. Then review the footage. See what I did, then make your call. He dipped his chin in the slightest nod. Tomorrow. No, I snapped firmly. Right now. But he headed to the sleeping quarters without a glance back. I stood deserted in the kitchen once more, the device still nearby. Salty streams traced my face, warm and unrelenting. It seemed John teetered between us two women, one tugging with affection, the other with venom. And I sensed that unless he chose swiftly, it'd shatter him. The evening hung still, oppressively so. I rested beside John on the mattress, attuned to his steady inhales. Superficial, fitful dozing, nothing like real slumber. My eyelids were shut, but my mind raced, fixed on the blank overhead, while the cell phone sat accusingly beside me on the bedside table, as though aware it wouldn't allow peace until John had confronted it. Come dawn, amid our steaming cups, the atmosphere hung thick with tension. John appeared utterly drained, no shut-eye at all. His complexion had gone ashen, his eyes bloodshot. I set his cup before him and settled across the way. John, I murmured gently, it's time we faced facts. You need to view that footage. He raised his head, his stare vacant and worn out. And suppose I watch it. If it shows what you insist, then poof, everything crumbles. The mom I remember, the faith I held. What's remaining after that? Me, I breathed. Us, your future. That's what's left. He held my eyes for an eternity. At last he dipped his chin in reluctant agreement. Let me see it. I grabbed the device, pulled up the clip. His fingers shook when he grasped it. He hit start. The recording rolled, grainy and unsteady, yet sharp in the details. Marianne prepping the dish, her fingers slyly dipping into her bag, the tiny drizzle from the vial, faint but unmistakable. John's features shifted as it played. At first, rigid unease, then sheer dismay washing over him. He paused it, backed up, replayed the segment multiple times. No way, he muttered. Impossible. That's not. She couldn't have. His words cracked. He buried his face in his palms, drawing ragged breaths. Lord help us. I rested my hand lightly on his forearm. That's her, John, right there on screen. Why, though? His reply rasped out like gravel. Why pull a stunt like that? I'm her boy. It's not personal, I said quietly. This is about the estate, the home, the cash, her stability. She craves it all solo. He denied it with a shake, salty tracks streaking his face. But she cares for me. I've sensed her affection forever. Perhaps her version of care, I replied softly, but her avarice overrides it. You're invisible to her now, just a threat to her gains. John rose unsteadily, bracing against the tabletop. This is too much. Denying my own mother. He trailed off, slamming his knuckles into the wood. Hell. I got to my feet too, pulling him into a hug. He yielded, collapsing against me like a lost kid adrift. You're not on your own, I soothed. We'll navigate this side by side. But no more ignoring it, John, or you'll forfeit it all. He managed a faint nod. Give me space to process. Time's scarce, I countered kindly. Paul's fading fast, and once he's gone, her rush intensifies. He withdrew, dropping onto the couch with a thud, cradling his head. I joined him nearby, holding my tongue. We lingered in prolonged quiet as a vehicle groaned past the window, the world marching forward oblivious. Within, a blend of ease and dread stirred. He'd glimpsed reality, yet I realized the ordeal had only just kicked off. It required 2 full days for John to steel himself, days where he uttered little, touched even less food, merely haunting our space like a specter. I gave him room. Talk wouldn't mend such wounds. The choice was his alone. By day 3, he abruptly set aside his drink and declared, "Phone her, invite her here." His tone was hushed, yet resolute. I agreed with a tilt of my head. Within the hour, Marianne filled our kitchen entrance, as polished as ever in her routine drop-ins. Outfit impeccable, tresses shining, a faint grin playing. "John, darling, you're ghostly. I whipped up some soup for you. It'll fortify you." John perched at the counter, fingers interlocked. He met her eyes, revealing a resolve I'd never witnessed in him. "Mom," he stated evenly, "take a seat." Marianne's lids fluttered in annoyance, but she complied. "Trouble. You two seem mournful, like mourners." "We might be," John shot back, burying what faith we had. She let out a clipped, uneasy chuckle. "Care to elaborate?" I positioned myself behind him, my palm on his back. He inhaled deeply. "I caught footage of you, slipping something into my meal on the sly. Care to clarify?" The room fell still for a beat. Marianne's eyes darted, stalling. Then a slim smile returned. "Oh, John, merely a bit of soothing herb tonic. You've been wound tight. Thought I'd ease it for you." "Why hide it?" His pitch quivered. "Why the secrecy?" Silence stretched. "It wasn't soothing, Mom," he pressed on. "It left me ill, time after time, post every call." Her mouth tightened. She dodged my look. "Spill it, Mom." John's tone fractured now. "Why harm me like this?" And out it poured, icy and blunt, no remorse. "Because you block my path," she stated. John went rigid. I gripped his shoulder harder, sensing the tremor in him. "Block your path," he echoed faintly. "To what?" "My future," Marianne snapped. "Once your dad passes, it all reverts to me. Except if you linger, then sharing's required. And I've divided enough over the years, John. With him, with you, with all. Time I claim it outright." John's expression turned. "Then you would murder me. Your very own child. You just don't get it." Her tone remained steady, nearly soothing. "This isn't personal. It's about enduring, about stability, about what I'm entitled to." I advanced a pace. "Entitled to what, exactly?" "All you're owed is a cell in jail, Marianne." She fixed her gaze on me, icy and unyielding. "Do you truly believe a soul would side with you, a son's wife versus his mother? I brought up John. I fed him, shielded him, sacrificed it all for him. And you're merely the spouse who might have bolted one day." "I'm staying put," I shot back. "But you're exiting now, and you won't return." John eased himself upright, unsteady on his feet, yet his words rang sharp. "Mom, you're cut off from being my mother, not after attempting this on me." Marianne gaped at him like he'd struck her. Briefly, hurt flashed across her features. Then she rose, snatching her handbag. "You'll regret this," she spat. "You'll witness who ends up with nothing." With that, she vanished. The door banged closed in her wake. John collapsed into the seat again, his face hidden in his palms. God, Lisa, she truly intended to. I wrapped my arms around him. "Yeah," I murmured, "but she failed because you finally recognized the truth." We clung together for what felt like ages as the city thrummed beyond the walls, oblivious to our turmoil. Yet within, our world had shifted forever. Come morning, before dawn broke over Portland, John rasped, "We need to visit Dad." I agreed without hesitation. I'd harbored the identical urge, but held back from saying it aloud. We headed to Gresham. The road stood deserted. A murky fog enveloped everything. John stayed mute throughout the journey, eyes fixed outside, knuckles white on the wheel. I sensed his strain, his anguish. He was heading toward a fading father, bearing news that his spouse had schemed to toxify their boy. Upon arrival, silence hung over the home. Aunt Teresa had arrived ahead. She let us in. "He's conscious," she murmured, "though frail. Make it quick." We entered the sleeping quarters. Paul lay propped there, gaunt beyond my prior glimpse. His lids drooped halfway, but as John approached, they lifted. "My son," he exhaled, lips curving faintly. John dropped to his knees at the bedside, clasping his dad's fingers. "Dad, there's vital information." His tone cracked. "Concerning Mom." Paul's stare turned inquisitive, alert. I settled on the opposite edge and rested my palm over his. "Paul, Marianne's slipping substances to John that's sickening him. We witnessed it. She aims for him to perish before you do. That way, she claims it all." Dismay shadowed Paul's expression. He shut his eyes, drawing ragged breaths. "I suspected as much," he confided lowly. "That's her nature." "Dad," John urged, tears tracing his cheeks, "you must act, or she'll forfeit her soul and I'll forfeit mine." Paul met his eyes with startling clarity that chilled me. Not while I draw breath. Teresa slipped inside, as if drawn by the gravity. "Paul," she cooed, "the lawyer's been summoned. He's en route." True to her word, within the hour, Mr. Miller, the longtime family attorney, entered, stern-faced with a silver beard and weathered satchel. "Mr. Weber," he stated evenly, "do you intend to amend your testament?" Paul inclined his head feebly. "Affirmative, right away." In a quavering murmur, he instructed, "My full holdings pass to my son, John Weber. If he precedes me in death, his portion bypasses Marianne Weber and transfers to his spouse, Lisa Weber. Marianne receives solely the mandatory legal share, nothing revocable. All remaining bequests to her, I rescind." His frame was skeletal, yet he scrawled his signature under Miller's steadying hand. I barely breathed. It was sealed. Marianne returned hours on. Spotting the attorney upon entry, she halted abruptly. "What's occurring?" she demanded, voice piercing. "A testament revision," Mr. Miller answered matter-of-factly. Her eyes darted to Paul. "This is impossible." She lunged toward the bed, but John blocked her path. "Mom, cease." Paul lifted a frail arm. "It's final. You've overreached, Marianne. You've ruined too much. I refuse to let your darkness taint my son as well." She stood stunned for an instant. Then a piercing wail escaped her. "You've all deceived me." She fled, the door crashing in her trail. Paul offered a weary grin, fingers entwined with John's. "My son," he breathed, "you're liberated now." 2 days hence, he slipped away serenely. John and I flanked each other at the burial site. Marianne stayed absent. The document was recited, and her schemes dissolved into ruin. She claimed only the obligatory legal allotment, no excess, no residence, no wealth, no dominance. John gripped my fingers. His look bore weight, yet sharpness. She forfeited Lisa, but I still mourned my mother. I leaned against his side. Perhaps she'd strayed long before. We lingered amid the chill, certain the chapter had closed. The venom had cleared from our existence. 4 months elapsed since Paul's passing. 4 months since It had been ages since anyone laid eyes on Marianne. Following the will's recitation, she simply vanished, relinquishing the Gresham residence, and her current whereabouts remained a mystery to all. Perhaps bunking with a far-off relative or tucked away in some corner of Ohio. Occasionally, I pondered whether she'd resurface one day. Yet as time marched on, her presence in my mind dimmed gradually, much like a silhouette fading under the relentless daylight. John and I endured a trying period, days heavy with quietude, uncertainties, and sorrow. He mourned his father's passing, yet equally the idealized vision of his mother that lay irreparably broken. It felt as though he'd been bereft of two souls, each in their distinct manner. But bit by bit, a shift occurred. We'd stroll along the Willamette River, fingers intertwined amid sparse conversation. On other occasions, we'd settle in the den with tunes playing softly, his head leaning against my side. Inch by inch, he was reclaiming his path toward normalcy. One twilight, as we lingered on the terrace with the sun dipping below the skyline, John gazed heavenward and murmured, "Lisa, I used to think family ties were unbreakable through blood alone, but I've learned it's the bonds that endure once the blood turns toxic." I inclined my head, moisture gathering in my gaze. "And what's left for us now?" He drew me nearer with an encircling arm. "Just us, you and I, that's plenty, beyond sufficient." A smile crossed my lips as I sensed the chill departing from him, warmth seeping back in. After what seemed an eternity, our dwelling reclaimed its sanctuary status. No more a war zone. From time to time, my thoughts drift to Paul, his subdued grin from the sickbed, the resolve he summoned for that final alteration to the will. In doing so, he preserved us far more than he realized. And now and then, Marianne enters my mind too, not fueled by resentment, but by an odd melancholy. A lady who grasped for it all, only to forfeit everything in the bargain. Still, when I turn to John, I'm reminded we've weathered the venom, and perhaps that's the profoundest insight of them all.